You're live. Go ahead and start.
Good evening and welcome to the City of Topeka Planning Commission meeting. We are a commission appointed by the mayor and city council to plan for the orderly growth and development of the community, to hold public hearings, and to make recommendations to the city council on planning items. Please note that the city council rules state that the public hearings for planning cases shall be conducted solely by the planning commission. No additional public hearings will be conducted by the city council. Tonight's cases are tentatively scheduled to be heard by the city council next month. Agendas can be found at topeka.org. For cases that require public hearings, the procedure will be as follows. First, the planning department staff will summarize the case. Next, we will hear from the applicant or their representative. Then we will receive public testimony. Public comments should be addressed solely to the chair and are limited to 4 minutes. Chris, please take the roll.
Mr. Dean?
Here.
Mr. Freed?
Here.
Ms. Herron?
Here.
Mr. Knar is absent. Mr. Kaup?
Here.
Ms. Messina?
Here.
And Ms. Pearson?
Here.
Mr. Chababin and Mr. Warner are absent, but we do have 6 for a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the June 22nd meeting. Are there any proposed changes or corrections to the minutes? Mr. Kaup.
Mr. Chairman, a minor thing, but since it involves you, I thought I'd point it out. On the bottom of page 4 of the draft, 2 lines from the bottom. Since with nobody else coming forward to speak, I believe that should be you, Mr. Chairman.
That is a good catch, Mr. Kaup. I would agree with that. So with that one change, are there any other changes or revisions to the minutes? Okay. With that change, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So move as amended.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Chris, would you please call for the vote?
Mr. Dean?
Abstain.
Mr. Freed?
Aye.
Ms. Herron? Aye. Mr. Kaup?
Aye.
Ms. Messina?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 with 1 abstaining.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is declaration of conflict of interest or ex parte communications by members of the commissioner staff. Any issues? Not seeing any. Then we will move on to item D, action items. First item is P2209 Timber Ridge Subdivision number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to start out, Timber Ridge number 3 is a major plat and represents the final phase of the Timber Ridge subdivision, which was approved in 1990. The parcels included in this subdivision make up 38.85 acres, and it is located south of Southwest 53rd Street and east of Southwest Wanamaker. It is located in the UGA and is a service tier 3. As this was going through, the developer entered into an interlocal agreement allowing for future development within the UGA previously. This helped pay for the Southwest Wastewater Interceptor, and that is why this is being allowed. So this is the preliminary plat for this final phase. The final plat consists of 84 lots of single-family residential, and this is the final plat for Timber Ridge Subdivision number 3. Staff is recommending approval of Timber Ridge Subdivision number 3 to City Council. That concludes what I have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Mr. Kaup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick one. I note the plat note that gives the consent to annex on this. Was there a similar plat note for Timber Ridge Subdivision number 1, number 2? I know those are pretty old.
I'm not sure at this time. I will have to go back and look, but I believe there was, but I can confirm that later.
I think it's important to point out that the development agreement that was signed between the developer of this property, the school district, and the city, there is a consent attached to that, so these properties are consented already.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? All right, I don't believe this requires a public hearing, but is there anyone that wishes to make comment?
Good evening, Commissioners. Angela Sharp with Bartlett and West. I'm representing the property owners. And as Bryson mentioned, Timber Ridge originally was platted in 1990 and did not develop because it did not have connection for a sanitary sewer. And the school district 437 actually was mandated by KDHE to connect all of their lagoons for J. Scheidler Elementary, the administration center at 53rd and Wanamaker, the high school and the middle school, to get off of their lagoon systems that were private and connect to a public sanitary sewer system. So there was a large wastewater study done, and it was determined that the best routing would be through the area that was already platted as Timber Ridge Estates. And so the interlocal agreement was entered into. Dalton Meyer Homes was a participant, as was mentioned, and so as part of that agreement, they did consent to annexation at that time. And so this is, as Bryson mentioned, just the continuation of that final platting process that had occurred at that time. They've had a phased development since that time. They started developing in 2012, and they develop about 15 or 20 residential lots per phase. And they have a model whereas they take out-of-pocket money to put in the utility infrastructure, sanitary sewers, water lines, and then they only have benefit districts for the street construction. So they have a lot of skin in the game, and they've been successful at that. So this evening, it would be the continuation of the phases after the current two phases that they're working on right now. So they would continue in that same format with 15 to 20 lot phases moving forward. And so we would just ask for your approval for one of the few developers that's really left in our community these days. And as we all know, both nationally and locally, we do have a shortage of housing. And when we have responsible developers that are building the kinds of homes that are in demand, it's really contingent upon us to support that. So hopefully we will gain your support this evening. I will be here for any questions you might have, and I'll stand for those now if you have any.
Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I could just clarify something. This is a plat, and the Planning Commission has sole authority to approve it tonight. You don't recommend approval. You approve it tonight. It then will go to the governing body to accept the land dedications in the plat.
Thank you. All right. Are there any further questions for staff or any comments regarding the item? Mr. Cowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a preliminary and final.
Correct.
And given that, why, in the third page of the staff report, we're talking about a waiver to the 6-month requirement on preliminary plat. Is that, what am I missing here, Bill? Is that necessary?
Commissioner Cowell, there is a regulation in our subdivision code that requires it puts a shot clock on the preliminary plat, basically, and I think that's the 6-month timeline. And so we pretty typically will waive that time frame so that we can move these things along.
Was this related back to 2012 or?
No, this really applies to any. I mean, this has been, you're talking about the time.
Yeah, when was, this is both preliminary and final.
Correct.
That's when the preliminary plat was filed.
It was filed with the final plat here within the last 3 or 4 months. Yeah.
All right, well, I'm lost, but I trust you.
Yeah, it's an oddity that we normally, again, waive, so that it frees up everyone to not be locked into a timeline. And so to submit both at the same time, both preliminary and final, we get the waiver.
This is anticipatory.
Yes,
We're
it's
going forward.
it's at their risk basically to file both of these at the same time.
Okay.
Normally, for those of you in the past, way past, a preliminary plat would come to you first. You'd approve that, and then we'd bring back the final.
Okay.
So, within the last, I can't remember the last time we did that. We usually just bring both now at the same time, so.
Okay, I take comfort from the fact it's an oddity. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
moved forward approval of the final plat for Timber Ridge subdivision number 3 to the governing body for acceptance of land to be dedicated for public purposes subject to the conditions in staff report below.
Is there a second?
Demetria Taryn, and I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Just make certain that the waiver, the variance request is contained within the motion.
Sorry, not to confuse, but that is an administrative waiver that I signed, and that I guess is memorialized in the staff report. I don't think it's on the plat, so it's already been approved.
Okay.
It's not for the planning commission.
I'm sorry, but the report says it's requested that the planning commission grant an extension. So if it's handled administratively, you ought to just amend the staff report.
That would be
to
inaccurate.
clarify that.
Okay.
So, yes, thank you.
So noted, yes.
Any other discussion? Chris, could you please call for the vote?
Mr. Dean?
Aye.
Mr. Freed?
Aye.
Ms. Herron?
Aye.
Mr. Kelp?
Aye.
Ms. Messina?
Aye.
And Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. On to action item D2, A2202 Cacti Land LLC regarding an annexation of property along Southeast Croco Road.
Commissioners, I'll handle this one. So Cacti Land LLC is requesting annexation of approximately 79 acres. The owner plans at this time to construct 188 single-family homes and 78 duplex units on that property. Project will be connecting to city sewer and water, so that our utility rules require that development that's doing that has to annex. That's the case here. Just a little bit of kind of process and background. This is a little different from our usual annexation cases that we bring to you. This is going to be an island annexation. It's contiguous to an island, which doesn't qualify that as being contiguous to the city through the annexation rules. So this annexation will have to go to the county for their review, and then also ultimately, if moved on by the county, the governing body, the city governing body, will pass an ordinance. So there's a little bit of extra process to these island annexations. And also, just a reminder that Planning Commission review is not required by state law for annexations. What you're doing here today, or to approve annexations, what you're doing here today is implementing or considering a policy within our land use growth management plan that you review annexations 10 acres or greater for consistency with the land use and growth management plan. So that is the action here tonight. And there's a look at the concept for the development of that property. Oops. Back here. So the property lies within Tier 3 of our urban growth area. This Tier 3 makes up the bulk of our urban growth area outside the city. Developing these areas requires graduation into Tier 3, meaning that it's cost-effective for the city to make investments in all of the urban services to serve that property. The project, while not being contiguous to the city, does have existing infrastructure and services available. Staff has determined that installation of those services to the site fit the constraints of existing budgets, or the revenue that's generated by that development will help offset future maintenance, repair, and replacement costs. We've provided a little more information in the staff report about those different services and infrastructure. And last thing here is staff's recommendation is that this annexation is consistent with the comprehensive plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of staff? All right, not seeing any. Is there anyone here from Cacti Land LLC to speak to the matter? Okay. Not seeing any. Is there anyone here that wishes to comment on this item? Okay. Don't have anyone coming forward, so I'm not cutting anybody off this week. Any further questions or comments regarding this item? All right. Then I would call for a motion on the item for annexation.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Cobb.
I offer the motion that the Planning Commission find that the annexation of the subject property is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Is there a second?
Second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Not hearing any. Chris, could you please call for the vote?
Okay, we'll go from the bottom up. Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Messina?
Aye.
Mr. Kalp?
Aye.
Ms. Herron?
Aye.
Mr. Freed?
Aye.
And Mr. Dean.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is communications to the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple, I'll get some of the housekeeping out of the way. Your last couple of zoning cases did go before, or did go forward. One of them was acted on and approved. That was the 6th and Fairlawn, Ramada Hollow change from M3, M2 to PUD. So that is moving forward. It also was approved for incentives, so that's good. We should see something on that before the end of the year. And then the other case, Providence Park, CUP, there was a protest petition that was filed by the neighbors, and it constituted enough that it now will require a major super majority vote to approve your recommendation. And we have to do that. We put it off until August because we have to have everybody at the governing body there by rule. So we'll be hearing that. They'll be hearing that on August 9th, just so you know. Did I miss anything there? Is that right, Mary? And then the other communication that I sent along was the ADU survey, and I did hear back from a couple folks. Nothing, no changes. Although I would agree with one of the comments. I wish it was a question maybe shorter, but we couldn't think of anything to cut. So if you have any comments or you want to discuss, we have it pulled up tonight. If you have any further thoughts on it.
Does anyone have any thoughts, comments on the survey?
I think this revised version of it is very good. It's a good improvement
I agree.
over the earlier draft. Having the graphic in there is very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I was fine with the survey.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any, or if you think of others, just please pass those along. We'll probably not get this out right away. I want to get our infrastructure set up, our webpage and whatnot, so we can have information, background information for those folks who want to get more. Also probably want to touch base with City Council just so they know that this is going out. So we'll take a few weeks to do that. So I appreciate your help on this. I kind of like the way it turned out with your help.
In terms of distribution, can you kind of highlight some of the ways you're going to send it out there?
Yeah, Commissioner Pearson, we would normally just hand this over to our communications folks, and then they would start distributing it in all of the things that get communicated, including the city manager's weekly report, which goes out to the media. We would put it in all of our social media. We don't know if we'll do a special press release or not, but that's on the table. We also like to feed the Community Advisory Council as well, and hope to get it out to neighborhoods and NIAs, and those leaders. We send it to we have a master list of contacts that we just, to be honest, spam everybody with it. So
I'll see it 100 times.
yeah. All the commissioners. Yeah. Yes.
Will there be an option for paper form?
For a paper form, yes. We need to think about how that, or put that into when we distribute it, put that in as an option to please contact us. But the link was the best way to do it right now. It wasn't coming across well as a PDF, which is why we sent it out as a link. But to print it off and have paper form, we're going to need to perfect that because it was cutting off some words.
Yeah, I tried printing it.
Did you find that? Yeah.
Will it be available in Spanish?
At this time, it has not been looked at.
Is there a thought to get it translated?
If we can, yes. Yes.
I mean, you might as well. And also in terms of the focus groups, I Googled today and saw some examples of some other surveys. One thing that I really liked, they used it also as a recruitment tool for their focus groups. So if you clicked yes that you were interested in it, it took you to another form where you could put in your personal information and you could start building a base for those with that. I thought that was a pretty good idea.
That's great to know. Yeah, we'll have to figure out how to make.
Oh, hand it over to marketing; they'll figure it out.
I know. This gets out of our lane.
Yeah, I thought so. Just thought I'd bring it up though.
Okay.
Other than that, look. Other than all of that, I think it's wonderful. Thank you for making those changes.
Thank you. That concludes my communications.
Okay. Anything else anybody has? All right. If not, I call for a motion to adjourn. Oh, no one is in a hurry to do anything.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Demetrius Heron, I second.
All right. We'll call it good. We are adjourned.